If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank LOTIERZO and Jack HIRSH. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank LOTIERZO and Jack HIRSH.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank LOTIERZO, former writer, try to be full-time observer, joined by former 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. Jack, when we first started this show, you wanted to be Mike Francesa and you wanted me to be Chris Russo. We have 3 fights coming up, and I will gladly play Russo in this show.
Yeah, I just have one thing I just thought about. I didn't think about it before the show. I knew Joe Frazier, but you knew him better than I did because you worked out of his gym, you know, as a former fight out of Joe Frazier's gym in Philadelphia. I just knew him, you know, through some interviews. And
I have no idea where you're going here.
But this is where I'm going. If he saw us now, what we both had on, would he take kindly to LOTIERZO and HIRSH? Would he, Smoke and Joe, even be willing to come on this podcast? He would disown you, Frank, and he would just consider me like an Ali flunky. You know,
I'm going to tell you what he would say.
He would brush me off, but he would end any friendship he had with you.
He would say that he had Ali hurt 3 times in every round they fought. He won the first fight. Ali mugged him in the second fight, and the third fight only ended because he couldn't see out of his eye, and he would try to convince us that he won all 3 times, that Ali is a con man and isn't the real fighter that everybody thinks he is. But then again, in Joe's eyes, if you don't fight like Mike Tyson or Boom Boom Mancini, you're not a real fighter. If you fight like Larry Holmes or Ali, you're not a fighter. You're a dancer.
But this weekend, there are a couple of fights. There are a couple of fights of interest. At least I'm interested. I believe you are too. Even though we might be dealing with certain negatives. First off, whenever we have a guest on this show, I think we automatically become more interested in their career, how they're doing going forward.
I agree.
And I think it's human nature for us to want them to have success. You know, we had Christian Prenga on the show. We didn't have Anthony Joshua. If we had Anthony Joshua, we might have been pulling for him too. Christian Prenga is a little bit of a sentimental favorite to us because he came on the show and he'll come back, win, lose, draw. He'll definitely come back. We could get him back 100%. And there's the element, we keep hearing about Frank, the element of the unknown with Christian Prenga. Well, he hasn't fought anyone, but if you want to forget Anthony Joshua's past fights that took place long ago, who has more of an element of unknown? Maybe Anthony Joshua's element of unknown kind of mirrors Christian Prenga's a little. How do we know what Anthony Joshua is going to bring to the table? It took him 6 rounds to do away with Jake Paul, who's not a heavyweight, and Christian Prenga is a big heavyweight. And if Christian Prenga is durable, we don't know that whether he isn't for sure, okay? But if Christian Prenga is very durable and he can take whatever Joshua dishes out and hangs
which is
around,
a big ass.
It's a big if. Anything could happen. Joshua, like you pointed out, is flawed. Like you pointed out in the past, he could fall apart at the seams. And Christian Prenga could conceivably get him out of there.
Here's my thought there. First of all, I do think Joshua was tentative against Jake Paul because losing to Jake Paul is actually worse than losing to Christian Prenga, because Christian Prenga is a big heavyweight and he's a real fighter. Even though we know Jake Paul is basically a real fighter, he's still more of a novelty than a guy like Christian Prenga. So I don't think Joshua will fight as scared as he did against Paul, where it's like he wanted to wait for the perfect shot. He didn't want to take a chance of getting clipped with something he didn't see and hurt. However, we both know that Christian is a former kickboxer And it's like being involved in combat sports and martial arts. There is something to say for that. Those guys are tough. So he's not going to fold at the sight of Joshua, or Joshua's muscles aren't going to scare him. Joshua's going to have to hit him and hurt him and prove to him that he's the real deal. Also, Jack, I just think Anthony Joshua is capable of losing to any guy that's big with some power, who's not afraid to let his hands go. There's no dispute that Joshua has more talent than Pranger, and he should win the fight. And if you go by the checklist, it should be a relatively easy fight. But if Pranger comes out and throws some heavy heat at him, Jack, and he senses that those punches might hurt him, we could have an interesting night. I mean, I'm not going to pick him, but it could be an interesting night because, I think Joshua can lose to anybody because I don't trust him mentally.
If it comes down to a battle of attrition, which is possible, okay? Let's say talent doesn't completely decide to fight. Joshua has more talent, let's be honest about it.
But no, he's first tier.
Let's say Joshua gets off to a good start, first 4 rounds. He's winning handily, but it's physically taxing for him in a sense because Pranger's big, strong, maybe not going anywhere. Even though Pranger's not the type of fighter who I anticipate putting on a lot of pressure, he's a big guy. And just being in the clinches could tire you out to a degree. And mentally, Joshua could get frustrated saying, hey, 4 rounds have gone by. I've hit this guy with my best shots. I don't know where, this might be a long evening. If it comes down to a battle of attrition, and I'm not saying for 1 second that Joshua doesn't have a lot of heart. I'm not inferring that.
He has heart.
And we don't know about Pranger as far as that goes. Is Pranger the type of fighter who's going to fight? I hate to use the word basically to the death. I hate to use that word. Forgive me if it's an inappropriate word. We certainly don't want to see that. Or would he take a more comfortable approach? Because people on the outside think differently. Pranger's manager, Keith Sullivan, told me this is more a win-win for us. Like if we just give him a good fight, Joshua,
or a scare,
we're going to get other opportunities later on. We have so much to gain, okay? And Joshua, he says, has so much to lose. Because if Joshua wins and doesn't look good, he's going to have to, at the very least, explain himself. Or is this element involved? You've been around a lot of fighters, Frank. If a fighter is as filthy rich as Joshua, and Joshua is set for life many times over, we would have to assume, financially, right, that is. Would Joshua be willing to push it to the limit and just say, screw it, I'll get my money, or even if I lose, I'll fight another day, I'll come back? Is one guy more?
Jack, I don't think Joshua looks at it that way. Because, as you said, he has the money. He wants to iron out his legacy. And he knows if he wins this fight, he can count on Fury winning the night before. And that will set up a big fight with Fury. And if he beats Fury, that washes away some of the stench around him from some of his other fights. So I don't think he'll mail it in. And I can't see why Pranger would, for the fact that, as you said, he has nothing to lose. Every minute he goes, he increases his value. And it's like if he takes him late and gets stops late, but makes Joshua look vulnerable, he gets another big payday. I just can't see any scenario where he would just bail.
But they're looking at it, the fighters are looking at it a different way. According to Keith Sullivan, Pranger's manager, like I mentioned before, Pranger isn't looking at this, I'm in a big event, I'm in a big fight. He's not soaking in the adulation. Pranger doesn't even want to bother with press conferences, interviews. He does it out of an obligation, okay, to do so. And he wants to change his life and the life of his family by winning this fight. That's what it means to him. It's not like, I'm in a mega event, I'm coming to the arena smiling, I'm in the big time. That means nothing to him. Just changing his life. You know, by winning.
But Jack,
this
I
fight,
like
that's
that
what means
mindset.
to him. Yeah.
I like that mindset that, like, you do think of it like, forget about I'm at the big event. Look, my favorite team, the Dolphins, the year before they went undefeated, they got their butt kicked by the Cowboys in Super Bowl VI. And Don Shula said, the problem with my team was they thought they made it because they got to the Super Bowl, and they didn't realize that getting there didn't mean anything unless you won it. And the next year they had a different mindset. I like the idea that Pranger has that mindset that there is no tomorrow. I have to win this fight. This isn't about like me making it to big time. I have to win this fight.
But no one talks about this. Joshua actually has an insurance policy for this fight if things get way too rough. He actually has an out. And you know what that out is, Frank? A rematch clause. Pranger doesn't have it. Pranger loses, you know, he's out. Joshua doesn't have to have anything to do with it.
There's no parachute for Pranger if he loses.
But if Joshua, if things get rough, let's say he catches a thumb in the eye or something, big distress, let's say, he could think, okay, I lose, but Eddie Hearn's going to push for an immediate rematch. And you know the way the public thinks. Joshua could arguably lose this fight, and then if 3-4 months later he beats Prang in a rematch, that's all people are going to focus on. I mean, a case in point, and we're going to talk about it later, Conor Benn lost the first fight to Chris Eubank because he won the rematch. No one talks about the first fight.
Right. And Jack, that Joshua has that latitude because he's the money fighter. And it's hard to think of money fighters that didn't have those clauses in their contracts. I mean, that's why we love Ali so much, because when he was trying to get back at Frazier after losing, all the guys he fought, all contenders, there were no rematches clauses in those fights. He lost. That was it.
Yeah, the fight before Joshua Pranger, the night before, Tyson Fury fights Maurice Wack. I'm more interested in Joshua Pranger.
So am I.
The Fury fight, where's it playing? Where can I see it? It's not on the zone unless they get it at the last moment. How do I see this? I mean, that's absurd. How do I I still want to see, he's Tyson Fury. He's fighting an experienced guy, even though Fury's an overwhelming favorite. I want to see him perform. You know, there is a level of curiosity. And
Jack,
I don't know where I could see it.
You're making the point that I've been trying to make, and you don't like when I get negative, but here we go again. It's like, how can this sport continue to, how can it hasn't continued to grow in a long time. It's losing fans and it's getting less relevant. When you don't have access to these guys, how do you care about something that you don't see? I don't care. It's like, if I can't see it, I don't care about it. And here's another case where you have a bit. Now, look, the fight it's a setup fight. I mean, Wack was knocked out by Atama 2 years ago, and now Fury's going to use him for a tune-up, okay? But, even at that, I still want to see it. I want to see what Fury looks like. You never know what could happen, but the idea that we can't find it, and if we did find it, we'd have to pay for it and have 15 passwords and go through all that malarkey to see it. Jack, that's what's killing this sport. Think about this weekend. Let me finish. Right. Let me finish. We have Fury fighting Friday night. We have Joshua fighting Saturday night. And on the same night, we have Earl Spence fighting for the first time in almost 3 years to the day. How many people are going to see those fights?
Well, it's a little different. You're right. The Spence fight takes place after, actually, Eastern time. The Joshua Pranger fight, I estimate, will come on about 5:30 or thereabouts.
Eastern time.
Eastern time. I'm just estimating roughly. I could be an hour off, okay? Yeah, I mean, at least I know Joshua Pranger's on the zone, DAZN, the zone. I'm going to get to see that show. It has a couple of other halfway decent fights on there. And Errol Spence, Tim Tszyu, even though it's a fight dealing big time in negatives, it's one of the fights that will keep me up at least.
It's intriguing, Jack, because of all the dynamics.
It's intriguing, but that's going to be actually supposedly on the Zone. It's supposed to be Prime Video, the Zone, on a couple of outlets, but I'm not even certain whether it'll be on the Zone. But I told you, Frank, I got the ultimate package for the $449 a year, and it's supposed to give me all these events unless it's an absolute blockbuster pay-per-view fight. I mean, the events it'll give me, Teofimo Lopez against Raleigh Romero. Decent fight that I want to see that. As much contempt as we might have for Ryan Garcia at times, him against Conor Ben is a good fight. It's a very good fight. Yeah, I want to see that fight. And those are the type of fights I want to see, year round. But the Fury fight, where's it going to take place? If it's not in the UK, that means they sold the fans out, basically.
You mean Fury and Joshua if they do fight?
Fury and Joshua. But that's
well, let me ask you this,
story.
Jack. Let's assume they both win this weekend. Would you bet your bank account or your house that they'll definitely fight next? I wouldn't.
Not with Fury.
Okay. See, we can't even count on that.
Let me tell you, you mentioned something that's super intriguing, Frank, that no one's thought about, and it just popped into my head now. We keep assuming Fury's going to fight Joshua, and that's the plan, absolutely. If one of them should lose and then suddenly retire and they're out of the picture, who would Fury fight next if there's no Joshua to fight, and who would Joshua fight if there's no Fury to fight now? Would that speed up the Moses Utama Joshua fight? Because that would be just as big, maybe even bigger.
So Fury loses, Joshua wins, and Joshua and Utama fight.
Yeah, that would be just as big. I think.
That would be big. There's no doubt about it.
Okay. What happens if Fury wins and Joshua loses and Joshua's out of the picture? Please don't give me Pranga and Joshua. That doesn't do it. It wouldn't do it for me. But let's say Joshua's done. He loses. He gets knocked out. He retires.
He's done. He's done.
He's cooked.
I could see Fury fighting Pranger after that, Jack. I could definitely see Fury going after Pranger. Doesn't excite me either, but it's like I followed boxing for too many years of my 68 years, and I just know that would not be off the table.
As much of a clown as Fury is, the man is smart. The man knows boxing. He's smart. He'd look at Otama and say, "This is a young lion. I'm not in the mood, I don't want to mess with this guy."
He'd fight Pranger, Jack, and hope somebody else tested Otama before he got to him.
Well, no, I think he would fight Otama if it meant he could cash out. Fury would hold out until the money was so ridiculously high. He'd say, "Okay, I'm going to fight him. If I lose, I got this boatload of money. I still win even if I lose." I think that would be his attitude.
I believe if Joshua lost to Pranger, and Fury's going to beat Walk. I don't know if he's going to stop him, but he's going to win. I could see Fury making a big deal to say, "I'm going to fight the man and beat the man who retired Anthony Joshua." I could see him going that way. In the meantime, Itama will have fought Hrgovic. He'll have a better look at him just to see what he has and then extend it that way. Because I don't think Fury's worried about the fact that he's crowding 40 and getting old. I don't think that's in his mindset.
But these things, unless His Excellency comes through with big money, these matches are easier to verbalize than become a reality for the simple reason Pranga is signed to Matchroom Boxing to Eddie Hearn. Fury is not with Eddie Hearn. Okay, so something would have to be worked out. I'm sure it could be. Yep, okay, intriguing fight this weekend too that you mentioned a little while ago. Errol Spence and Tim Tszyu, even though it's dealing big time with negatives. One guy, and I'm coming to the conclusion, Errol Spence, borderline Hall of Fame, if not a clear Hall of Fame, based on what he's done in his career. Against Tim Tszyu, who is to me, you know what Tim Tszyu is to me, Frank? A first round draft choice who I wind up playing on special teams, to give a football analogy. He's a really an excellent special teams player. He's a serviceable backup for my team, but he's not what I thought he was going to be. It just didn't pan out, and I'm convinced we've seen virtually the best of Tim Tszyu. I know he has Jeff Bennick, a great trainer, training him now, but a trainer can only improve a fighter so much. They can't wave a magic wand and change him completely. They maybe can improve him, but Tim Tszyu's the same guy, lost twice to Fandora decisively. He lost another fight after that decisively. But to me, I think Tim Tszyu is going to win this fight. I think he's going to stop Spence. And this is the revealing part about it, Frank. Okay, Spence has been out of the ring, what, like 4 years?
It'll be 3 years on the 29th of this month.
Oh, 3 years. Excuse me.
He fought Crawford July 29th of 2023.
Oh, he hasn't won a fight in 4 years, but he hasn't fought in 3 years. No disgrace losing to Terence Crawford, who's an all-time great. I mean, no disgrace in that, even though he lost badly. He showed a lot of heart. He hung in there. You know, he competed, you know, but Crawford was just too good. But he fought at 147 pounds his whole career, Frank. And now he had it in the contract to make 158. And he asked
now 160.
Now, they raised it to 160, and the Zoo team raised it to 160 without even asking for any compensation. They're not even holding him to it. They don't want to give Spence any reason to pull out of the fight. Sure, 2 pounds, we'll give it here. Unless Zoo could use the 2 extra pounds himself. You know, who knows?
Which may not be a reach.
If Crawford, and I'm going to tell you this, we talk sometimes on the sports show we do on this network about a great modern day quarterback. I mean, he's retired now, Russell Wilson. Did Russell Wilson play himself out of the Hall of Fame the way he performed the last few years of his career? And the more he hung around, the fairer the question became. If Errol Spence, who I think would be a Hall of Famer, you know, in a ballot coming up, I don't think he'd have to wait long, if at all. If he cashes out and comes up with a pathetic effort, and we see he would just cared about the money, and it's a money grab and nothing more, that's going to affect me, how I look at him when I have to cast a vote to see whether he gets into the Hall of Fame or not.
Well, do we know what his financial situation is? I haven't heard anything if he's in trouble or if he's okay and he's coming back because he wants to redeem himself after the Crawford fight.
I mean, Crawford himself, you know, he's an Errol Spence fan, he says. Crawford likes Spence.
He's going to the fight. He's going to cheer for him. I heard him say it.
Yeah, I mean, come on. That's the faith, you know, that Crawford, you know, has in Spence. I mean, and you would think if Spence needed any motivation, he feels that's awesome. You know what I mean? My past opponent, he holds me in that high a regard that he would actually travel all the way to my fight to Australia just to cheer me on. But the question's this: even if Spence has trained hard for this fight and is ready to give 100% effort, and we know Spence has a lot of heart. He showed it against Crawford, you know, in the loss. Lots of heart. He never quit and didn't make any excuses about the loss until recently.
Until later, right.
Yeah, but he took it like a real man, the loss, in and out of the ring for all that time. Is he ready to put forth a full effort, Frank? I don't know. I can't feel that he is.
I think he wants to. I don't know if it's still there, but I'm going to go back to some things I've heard. Why I'm picking against Spence, but there's a few reasons. I remember when before, I'm going to go back to Ali again. When Ali came out of retirement, Customato said that, nobody can lay off that amount of time and be close to what they were. The Friday before the Monday night fight, Joe Louis is on the Dick Cavett show, and Dick Cavett asked him for a pick, and he said, forget the names Clay and Frazier. He goes, Ali he can't take that much time off. I don't care who he is. He can't take that much time off and come back to what he was. A couple weeks ago, we were at a party, Wendy and I, and we hosted the party, and the Conor McGregor fight was on, and he hadn't fought in 5 years. And a couple of guys there said, who do you like? I said, look, I'm picking against McGregor for one reason. He hasn't fought in the octagon for 5 years. And what happened? He was injured in 50 seconds. Spence hasn't fought in 3 years. He hasn't won in 4 years. The last time he was in the ring, he was decimated. And I also think, Jack, that just like I'm a little leery on Canelo's next fight, I think Canelo will suffer the same effect. I think Crawford he didn't beat Canelo as bad, but I think what Crawford did to Spence is sort of what Hagler did to Mugabe. And as valiant as Mugabe was in that fight and Spence was, it was never the same afterwards. And I just think Spence is an accident waiting to happen. And I think after this fight, we're going to look back and say Crawford took it out of him, and maybe there's even a chance he was damaged before he fought Crawford. And I just don't think Spence is going to win, even though we both know if both guys are at their peak, Spence is a greater fighter than Tim Tszyu. And if they were both at their high, I would take Spence to win, but not this time. Too many things against him.
You just made me realize something, Frank. And that's about Crawford. Even though Crawford's motivation in going to Australia, I think is genuine, because Crawford's a nice guy, I think,
and he's a huge boxing fan, Jack. That's what I love about him. He goes to all the fights.
He wants to cheer Spence on. He wants Spence to do well, because in the lead up to the Spence Crawford fight, they got along. The two of them made the fight before they signed. They talked on the phone and they got along well. And there were never any hostilities between the two of them. There was like that respect was there. But this is what bothers me a little bit. If Spence comes up with a terrible effort and gets stopped, it shouldn't, Frank, but it might
will.
Tiny bit diminish Crawford a
It
little
will.
bit. People are going to say, well, who did Crawford beat? Spence was damaged goods. Look what happened after. He got stopped.
And think if Canelo loses his next fight, they'll say the same thing.
And there's a good chance that Christian Mabelli is going to mean to Canelo what Frankie Randall meant to Julio Cesar Chavez when he upset him in the first fight. I see that scenario, Frank. Mabelli winning a split decision over, Canelo. They're
going to say Crawford got them both at the right time.
Yeah, we're going to hear that, and it should all be irrelevant. Look, Joe Calzaghe turned in the most masterful performance against Jeff Lacey. Lacey was considered a savage on the cover of Ring magazine.
I picked Lacey to win that fight, Jack.
And but Lacey couldn't do anything after the Calzaghe fight. He was terrible. He fell apart. And now people are saying, who did he beat? Jeff Lacey, big deal. That's what they're saying. And but if
it's funny though.
If Spence should dominate and look great against Tszyu, it works the opposite effect. It gives Crawford a little
juice. Yes, it does. It does.
Yeah,
but then there'll be the same naysayers out there, Jack, that will say, well, you know what? Tszyu was never that good and he got exposed. That's their favorite word. Whenever somebody gets beat, they're exposed. They just don't understand how hard it is to win at that level consistently.
But I remember one big-time writer, really well-known. He was talking about before the first Leonard Hagler fight. He said, if Hagler loses to Leonard and then continues to dominate after that, continues to fight and turn in dominating performances, it'll be worse for him than if he turned in losing performances afterwards.
Who said that? Mike Katz?
He didn't. I'm paraphrasing now. I'd
But was
rather
it Mike
not say,
Katz?
I'd rather not say who the writer is, because if he feels I'm misquoting him or something, even though I don't feel I am, I
But he
don't
made
want
an
to.
actual good point, Jack. There's nothing that makes him look bad.
No, but it wasn't Mike Katz.
Okay. I can see that point. But look, they always say that, Jack, because look, fans are fanatics, and no matter what happens, if it can make their guy look good, they'll use that. They'll make everybody he fought look like a killer. And if it makes, if you don't like Crawford and you have a problem with somebody like me saying that, like, I think him and Leonard on their best nights, a 50-50 fight, they're going to pull up, well, look, he beat a damaged Spence, and look what happened to Spence against Tim Tszyu. And it's like, I'll have to eat that. But it's like that's just part and parcel. I mean, we see that, Jack. We see that in all sports. Look at Caitlin Clark. She has 45 points one night. She's the greatest thing ever. 17 points the next night, and she stinks. So it's like that's just how fans and the media are to a degree.
But certain fighters, great fighters, they're consistent over the years. And then you get other fighters who are trending towards greatness. They hit a bump and their whole career falls apart. Look at the Charlo brothers. Look at the Charlo brothers. Look at the two of them. Jamal Charlo, the middleweight, he's never lost, has he?
He's still undefeated.
He's still undefeated. We forget about him. He was supposed to fight on the undercard of Zeus Spence. He couldn't get a visa or whatever because he's gotten into some difficulties here in the United States. And his younger brother, Jamel Charlo, he loses to Canelo, but he doesn't bounce back. You figure bounce back fight would be someone like Sebastian Fundora. You lose to Canelo, but if you beat Fundora, you're back in business. The public, I think, is very forgiving. You might disagree over loss. They tend to forget if the fighter's brand is high enough. No one remembers Tank Davis knocked out Ryan Garcia. No one remembers that Raleigh Romero beat Ryan Garcia easily. I mean, they focus on the personality. I mean, that's just what it is.
And Jack, it's just funny how some fighters and athletes, they just have a spell on the fans, and no matter what they do, their fans will just always look at them as walking on water. I could name a bunch of fighters who that applies to. I try to varnish myself from that. I'm sure I fall victim to it sometimes, but that's just look, we're dealing with people, and that's just the way it is. I'm sorry, but you're totally right. If Spence gets taken apart, Crawford takes a hit.
Yeah, and certain fighters too, they don't even deserve to have their name mentioned. I mean, because of their lack of effort, their lack of respect for their profession, but they wind up in the news anyway. And I could either ignore them, not mention their name like they don't exist, or I could mention their name. I mean, I'll mention one name and I dread mentioning his name because I think he's a lazy, and you could fill in the word after that, and not in a personal, nasty way. A lazy athlete, put it that way. And that's the politest thing I could say about him. He's a
James Toney,
athlete.
Adrian Broner.
No. Adrian Broner trained. He trained. James Toney was erratic, but I respected Toney's skill level. He had one of the great skill levels for pure skill.
So who's the fighter?
Andy Ruiz is back.
Oh, that's a great example. Yeah.
I mean, and Andy Ruiz, like I said, was given the gold card because he beat Joshua once. They keep bringing him back, and he's going to be fighting September 4th at the Prudential Center in Newark. And now Andy Ruiz is one fight away from fighting for the title, as absurd as it is. The guy is lazy. He's unmotivated. He does not deserve another opportunity soon. He should have to fight for a couple of years and build his way back. But no, he's going to be allowed to take a shortcut. I don't have any respect for Andy Ruiz.
But sadly, Jack, in the heavyweight division,
I'm talking about as a boxer. And I'm not
Right.
even talking about his skill level, his lack of motivation. And listen, I don't wish anything bad for Andy Ruiz in his career. If he can win his fights, more power to him. But people get excited, like, oh, he's with Matchroom Boxing. And can we now see a rubber match, him and Joshua? Imagine this. Joshua beats Franga. The Fury fight falls apart. They can't come to an agreement. Matchroom Boxing decides we can't wait anymore. We're going to have a rubber match in the UK. Joshua against Ruiz. That, I have contempt for something like that, but it could become
And that would sell too.
Yeah, and Andy Ruiz does not
It would sell.
deserve
It would
the
sell.
payday based on merit. But he has the gold card for beating Joshua. So, more power to him if he can get it. But that shows you how fickle, the public is.
Jack, and again, as we know, in the heavyweight division, if you had a name at one time, like Andy Ruiz, you are always one win away from being back in the money.
Yeah, I was invited on a podcast. I went on a podcast last week. I was an invited guest. Billy C. Bill Colagero.
I know who he is.
Myself and 3 other guys on there. One of them, and I'll have him on our show in the future. I know you'd love to talk to Mike Silver, who wrote the book, The Art of Boxing.
Please get him on.
I'll get him on.
Please get him on.
I'll get him on. But Billy set up a debate. Who are greater fighters? The fighters of today or the old timers? And even though I said the fighters of today, I meant it in this sense. A Shakur Stevenson, for example, he would beat virtually all the old timers. He would have beaten Carlos Ortiz, for example. Was Carlos Ortiz a greater fighter? The old timers like Carlos Ortiz, a guy fighter decades before Tony Canzoneri, they were more accomplished. I'm not arguing who was more accomplished. The old timers were far more accomplished than the modern guys. But all in all, I'm not talking about the rarity like a Sugar Ray Robinson. Let's not put him in the equation. I'm saying, for example, a Gennady Golovkin is going to beat like a Billy Seuss at Ken Overland, I think, without any difficulties. I'm talking about something like that.
Say that to Mike Silver when he's on.
I did, but Mike was a gentleman. He tried to make his point. I said, for example,
what was his point?
Alexander Usyk, in my view, is big guy, tremendously skillful, would have beaten Jack Dempsey. I'm just giving a viewpoint like that. But all I'm here, and I know the old timers fought a lot more, and they are more accomplished, but the sport was different. But even in the case of Jack Dempsey, Dempsey didn't defend the title for 3 years. And, and we hear about Jack Johnson, the way he beat Jim Jeffries. And Mike Silver saying, well, the old timers could fight 45 rounds. The fighters today.
But they threw 3 punches around. They didn't throw 100 punches around.
And they wrestled. Yeah. I mean, listen, if you want to talk about a pure skill level, did certain fighters, old timers, I revere, no one had a greater skill level than Joe Louis, any of the heavyweights, for example. The way Joe Louis did things, I'll give anyone that. Okay? But it just was a debate that I felt.
So what was his retort, Jack, when you said that Usyk would beat Jack Dempsey?
Well, he said no, Dempsey would beat him. But then Silva was questioning Roberto Duran and Whitaker's greatness, saying, look, they were great fighters, but guys like Canzoneri would have found a way to do this or that. And maybe he's right. I mean, I can't say for sure. I do know this, Frank. I've lived through the 60s to this era now.
Right, me too.
I've witnessed quite a bit, okay? And I don't want to hear that the fighters got progressively worse from the 1940s to the 1970s. I mean, the nature of the sport changes. Fighters are fighting less. But my argument is this, Frank, that people never consider when they point out all the extra fights the fighters had before, why they're better, the old timers. The modern guys like Lomachenko and Usyk had an extensive amateur career,
See,
international
Jack, but a lot of
competition.
guys will shoot that down. But when you're fighting international guys, you're fighting pros
And you're fighting all these different
at that
styles,
level.
and it's a high pressure situation. But you want to know something, Frank? It mirrors sports, boxing. Goose Gossage, great reliever, Hall of Famer. He puts down Mariano Rivera. He doesn't think Rivera is that great. He says all he had to do is pitch one inning. I had to pitch multiple innings. You can't compare.
I mean, but there's a case there, Jack.
And there's a case there. There's an absolute case there. And there's a good case. But at the end of the day, I could make the argument, to me, Gossage is more accomplished because he had to pitch long in relief. I could actually make that argument and maybe win it and convince people. But I'll say this, the naked eye test, Frank, Rivera was better than Gossage, as great as Gossage was. The naked eye test, you see it.
I believe in that. I'm not a baseball fan to the extent you are, and I don't know as much about it as you, but I will go along with that. But then it comes down to peak or accomplishments. And our buddy, J. Russell Peltz, does have a point. Now, I think sometimes he gets stuck too much into everything back then was good, everything today sucks. I don't agree with him on that totally. But then again, if you talk about this guy had to ride the train across the country to fight such and such, they don't have to do that today, and they don't have to fight as much because they make more money. So all you can do is this. If I said to you, who is greater, Rocky Marciano or Tyson Fury? Marciano was more dominant and more relevant in his era than Tyson Fury was in his. Now, could Marciano with 188 pounds step in the ring with 265-pound Tyson Fury and beat him? I mean, we can argue that forever. That's why with the heavyweights, Jack, it's tough. But the other side of the argument is, you know what? When Ray Robinson fought a welterweight weighed 147 pounds. Well, a welterweight weighed 147 pounds when Ray Leonard fought, and he weighed 147 pounds when Terrence Crawford fought. I think we can make more of an apt comparison to those guys than we can to Muhammad Ali and Tyson Fury or Muhammad Ali to Jim Jeffries.
Well, I actually commented on that Fury Marciano post. I think it was put up by Ben Dowdy. After Lodge, they put something up. Dowdy likes to expand on it. And I put down the argument that Russell Peltz might make. But yeah, if Marciano were fighting today, he wouldn't weigh 180.
He'd beat Mike Tyson.
Pounds.
He'd be as big as Mike Tyson.
He'd be about 215 or thereabouts.
And that's what Tyson weighed, 216 at his best.
Right, and he'd be in the Deontay Wilder weight range, if Marciano were fighting today. So he'd certainly be able to hurt Fury. The size factor would still be a factor, but not nearly insurmountable. But Dowdy answered, no, we're talking about how things actually are, no.
So 88-pound Marciano, 188 against 265 Tyson Fury.
He doesn't beat that version of Fury. Just doesn't. Fury is too big. But then again, there has to be pause for thought. Who we mentioned in the beginning of the show, Smoking Joe Frazier, 205.5 against Ali, the fight of the century. You put him against the 265-pound Tyson Fury at Fury's best. I give Frazier a good chance of winning the fight, a very good chance.
But Jack, that's only because he was so great at forcing the fight and getting inside, where he could have neutralized Tyson Fury's advantages.
And Ali at 212 would have beaten, Tyson Fury, hit too fast for him, so on. So that kind of throws things off a little bit.
But Jack, if you notice, if you think about this, the boxers, and when I say boxers, I mean, quote, the guys that box, not the sluggers, not the swarmers, not the attackers or the counterpunchers, the boxers, the guys that had height and reach that could fight and use the ring, they always match up better historically down the road in what you would have a head-to-head tournament. Like, again, I think that Joe Frazier would have defeated Larry Holmes if they both were at their best. But in a tournament of the greatest heavyweights of all time, Holmes may have a better one-loss record because he matches up better with guys. He could box Lennox Lewis. He could box Joe Louis, where Frazier has to go into Lewis's right hand, both Lewis's. So it's like the boxers always had the advantage in that metric, under that metric.
You know, which is interesting, when you rate who's greater than who, you can say that Joe Frazier would have beaten Larry Holmes, but you could rate Holmes as a greater heavyweight. That's fine to do that. I remember...
Had more defenses, was champion longer. Frazier had 3 years where he was untouchable.
I remember talking with Max Kellerman a lot of years ago. We were hanging out, and we were talking about his favorite fighter, Pernell Whitaker, you know, at that time. And I said, look, you know, he kept saying Whitaker would better than Duran, so on. We were talking, and I said, look, if Whitaker and Duran fought 10 times, you know, maybe Whitaker would beat him 7, 8 out of 10. I don't know. Whitaker would win the majority, would be my guess. But if you put the two of them against one another at their absolute best, I'm going with Duran at their absolute best.
And that's the way the comparison should be. When we compare Secretary to other horses, we don't take all his times. We take, what was he on his best day? At the Belmont, he went 224, Jack. And all the years since 73, do you realize that no horse has run under 226? And he did it in 224. That's what you go by. He was the fastest. The clock tells you that.
Well, as talking about other sports, I mean, in boxing, they're not world records exactly. I can't think of anything that could be called a world record. And it's also the day of the event. Let's be honest, Frank. Some days, even though fighters make excuses all the time, there's nothing there for whatever reason. And you know it through, we're all athletes, anyone who works out. We're all athletes to an extent. And I know certain days I could go out, for example, jogging. And sometimes you could be pleasantly surprised. Your legs feel really good. You feel good. Other days, man, after like a minute or two, you know, you got nothing left. Even though you continue on and don't stop, you feel like you're like jogging in place. That's how.
But Jack, those sports are easier though, again, because it's man against the clock. Okay, on those good days, the clock doesn't lie. On the bad days, it doesn't lie. But when you have something that's subjective, like fighting, or I mean, even scoring like gymnastics and things like that, it's just so subjective. And that's why it's just so hard to compare athletes of different eras. I used to love to do that. As I get older now, I don't do it quite as much because I realize you really can't do it. I mean, like Dowdy's saying, like, you got to take Marciano at 188 against Tyson Fury. It's like, okay, but are you going to take a 53 Corvette and run it against a 2026 Corvette? I mean, the 53 didn't have the advantages.
I'm going to get Mike Silva on this show in the coming
Please
week.
get him on. I have a lot of questions for him.
I did question him on one thing that you started to go ballistic on, about Tammy Morello knocking out Lennox Lewis. He thought could happen. So I questioned him on that other podcast. I said, Mike, come on. How can you say Tammy Morello with a
Did he stick to that?
Well, no. He kind of gave himself a little bit of an out without backing off that stance. This was his reasoning. He says, look, he was speaking to one old timer. I don't remember the name. And an old timer was telling him that Mariella was good at finding chins or something. He found Lewis's chin and staggered him. And his argument was, well, Tammy Mariello was very skillful. He maybe could have found Lennox Lewis's chin, and Lewis was knocked out twice already, and Mariello could hit hard. That was his thing, you know. He was like putting the pieces together, per se.
Well, I doubt that Mike is watching, Jack. So, what you just told me confirmed what I've always thought, that when Mike puts things in a book, people thinks it's gospel. But when guys who know what they're talking about, like you or like me, confront him, he has wiggle room and he finds a way out and he doesn't stick to his guns as much. And that's what I have an issue with.
No, I mean, Mike's a nice guy.
He's a nice guy, Jack. I understand, but he's very biased.
Another thing that I complained to him about, and I even brought it up to you to an extent to complain about. Listen, I have no beef at all with anyone who says that Sugar Ray Robinson was the greatest fighter of all time, pound for pound. It's a matter of opinion, and it's certainly an extremely viable opinion, because when you talk about great athletes who are ahead of their time, he was, you know, outside of maybe Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth is obviously ahead of his time with his accomplishments, but Sugar Ray Robinson was way ahead of his time, way ahead of his time. The stuff he did was, you know, never seen before in a boxing ring. But my argument is, what people would say all the time is, oh, Sugar Ray Robinson, he would beat Leonard, he would play with Terrence Crawford, he'd beat Crawford easy. And
I don't believe that. No, I don't believe that either. And I love Robinson.
Crawford, I told Mike, I don't know who would win that fight. I mean, it's okay to say Robinson would beat Crawford. I'm fine with that. I'm completely fine with that. But it's a fight that Crawford could very well win. You know, he's great enough to actually win that fight. So Mike was saying, look, Crawford's a modern great fighter. So he put in, and Mike was a little diplomatic. He said, look, Tommy Bell gave Sugar Ray Robinson a tough fight. But then he changed his tune on that. He said, well, if Tommy Bell was in the mix, he'd be right in the mix today, which I guess he would be. I'm not going to argue that. But then again,
if he could go 15 rounds with Robinson, Jack, he's not in over his head against a lot of people. I'll say that.
Exactly. But listen, but I will agree with this. The old timers were more accomplished because of the nature of the sport, the amount of times they had to fight, the things they accomplished compared to guys today.
But Jack, the thing is, here's the thing though. And this isn't just Mike Silver. This is Russell Peltz to some degree and other guys. They don't give any of the modern guys credit for the guys they fought. Like Mike Silver would probably say, well, who did Terrence Crawford fought? So he would go by, he didn't fight anybody good. And Sugar Ray Robinson fought and beat 10 Hall of Famers. So he would go down that road. But Jack, you and I are both old enough to remember back in the late 60s and 70s, guys like Dave Anderson, Dick Young, and Bill Gallo were saying that Ali didn't fight anybody. Now we look back at his resume and you realize he may have fought the stiffest competition from start to finish than any other heavyweight champ in history. And I think he only fought one guy with a losing record, or maybe no one had a losing record. I forget. I looked at it. We did. My friend Monty Cox and I did this a few months back, and things don't stay with me like they used to. But it's like we went through some of the great guys and counted how many guys they fought with a losing record. And I think either Ali fought one, might have been Slim Jim Robinson, or none. But like I remember back in the late 60s and early 70s, Nat Fleischer, none of those guys said Ali didn't fight anybody, and because Frazier beat Ali didn't mean he was all that good. It's like they just discredit all the modern guys, and that's where I have a problem.
You know what's fun? You know what's funny too? Well, during the first coming of Ali, okay, they do. You know, when he was at his peak, you know, at the times he was beating Terrell Foley, they were talking
64
about
to 67.
Who would win between Ali and Joe Louis. And the old timers would say the same thing. Ali would be dancing around the ring, running around for a few rounds. He'd keep out of Lewis's way. He'd even be outboxing Lewis. Then Lewis would get him in the corner and knock him right out. Like, it's so simple like that. He'd just get him in the corner and knock him right out.
Well, remember though, Jack, back then, in their defense, though, we didn't know how good Ollie's chin was back then because it was never really tested.
Yeah, but getting back, well, I want to have Mike come on this show. And Mike was a gentleman on the show. I was.
Does he know you do a show with me?
I'm not certain. I can't say.
Because I contacted him via direct mail about 5 months ago. I said, look, Mike, I understand that you said this and this. I would like to debate you on it. I was very nice. Hi, how are you? I didn't say you're crazy. I disagree. I said, but I heard you made these statements that, Whitaker could, or Mayweather wouldn't be a good sparring partner for Canzaneri. Mariello would beat Lewis and whatever else he said. And who else he said? He said that Corbett would beat Tyson. And I said, look, I'd like to debate you on that. And he never responded.
Yeah, you know what? Wow. I think when Mike was speaking at Brooklyn College, when his book came out, The Art of Boxing, I came there. I was in the audience and I was introduced, at the time from the audience. And then they took questions and I mentioned Corbett and Tyson. And I said, look, if I said something to the effect, if Corbett fought Tyson and the over and under was, I'm just paraphrasing, was 60 seconds, I picked Tyson on the under and I took my money. Okay, it would end zip. But Mike on the podcast, and he was a gentleman. Mike was a gentleman. He was a good guy on that podcast. I want to give him his due, his respect. We talked about Roberto Duran, and he holds it against Duran, the no mas, saying if he's going to have that attitude, he kind of wonders how Duran would have held up against the old timers mentally because he quit against Leonard. And he was, kind of inferring would Duran have the stomach to fight these old timers tooth and nail.
And Duran's record in that fight going in was 72-1.
Yeah.
Does he get credit for all those fights? He can't say he didn't fight often or didn't fight anybody.
Yeah, I mean, listen.
But Jack, every fight, name a fighter that doesn't have a wart on their record. Even Crawford. You think the Madrimov fight was close. I don't think it was as close as you. But some people could say that's kind of he won 7-5. He was 1 round away from having a draw or whatever. It's like I could pick on anybody's record. If I want to, I could kill Ali for losing to a guy that had 7 pro fights.
I could even pick on Crawford if I wanted to. This way, I could say, okay, he beat Canelo. But what would Leonard have done with that same Canelo at welterweight? That Canelo wasn't going to beat Sugar Ray Leonard at welterweight. I mean, a middleweight.
But Jack, that fight was at 168, though.
168, so it's a bit unfair. Okay, but what happened? Yeah, but
comparing him to Leonard, Jack, isn't such a bad thing.
Yeah,
that's not such a bad thing. I've had this conversation with buddies of mine, and they don't think I am, but I am a huge Sugar Ray Leonard fan. Back in the 80s, I rooted for him in every fight of his career. Every fight of it. If he would have fought my brother, I would have rooted for him. Okay? However, in all those years, from the 80s on, Terrence Crawford is the only fighter who has come along. And I'm basing this on everything Crawford brings to the ring. And then he moved up in weight and he showed me how tough and durable he is. He is the only welterweight that if you said to me, Frank, Crawford who fought Spence is fighting Leonard who fought Hearns in 81. If you put a gun to my head and said, Frank, you have to bet on Crawford, I wouldn't be mad. I won't know if I would be counting the money, but I wouldn't be mad. And that drives some of my friends crazy, but I just think Crawford is
we have
that
about
good.
We have about a minute. Let's just quickly go over our predictions. I'm predicting that Joshua stops Pranga in 4 rounds. As much as it pains me, I'm not sticking to emotions because I like a guy. I'm picking Zoo to stop Spence in 7 rounds. I think Spence is checked out. And Fury should win in, let's say, 8 rounds. I mean, I don't think we're having any upsets. The one toss-up fight, I'm going with Zoo. Okay, quickly, before we have very little time left.
Well, Jack, it's like there's no quickness needed. I kind of agree with everything you just said. I think Pronger gets stopped. I think Fury goes rounds but wins. Wouldn't be surprised if it went the distance, but I could see him maybe getting a late stoppage. And I just can't pick Spence to win. I think that Crawford beat everything out of him that was left,
Okay.
mentally
Okay,
and
Frank.
physically.
We'll have a lot to talk about next week. See you then.
All right, guys. Good night. Thanks for watching.
You